it's always fascinated me, that strange time in the early to mid 2000s when nu metal ruled the world. Check out my Nu Metal Files series too, why don't you? This stuff was all over MTV, all up in our video games, and all over the world, just influencing my youthful acts in so many ways, but also kind of influencing some long-standing metal bands as well, like stuff I never thought I would have seen. I mean, Nu Metal Machine Head, that's still legendary. And through it all, there was some major tours with the genre, like based around it, stuff like the Tattoo the Earth tour, for instance. And hell, the genre even took over things like Ozfest and even Woodstock when it came down to it. But it's safe to say, the biggest blending of sounds of the times and its cultural representation could all be dwindled down to one tour for the ages. The Family Values Tour. And I say that not only because they landed massive acts like Korn or Limp Bizkit, but also a lot of hip-hop stuff and more like alternative, industrial, kind of glammy takes on the sound with stuff like Orgy, and of course today's bizarre, moody, underrated band, DEADSY. Now, I've talked about it here on the channel before, about how the nu metal sound was largely shaped by both Davis and Durst at the same time, and both of those guys pushed the genre even further when they started their own labels and started kind of signing up different groups. I think it's safe to say that some of these guys, they probably pulled the trigger a little too fast on. With Fred alone, we got stuff like Puddle of Mud and Stained, but there was also other stuff that was even lesser than that in my opinion, like Sinistar, for instance, who had a horrible relationship with Fred Durst and his label. Check out my Sinistar video next. The same can be said with Jonathan Davis though. It seemed that he was very anxious to sign literally any band that tickled his fancy. From standout acts at the time like Orgy all the way down to forgettable one-album wonders like Videodrone. But I would have to say that Davis had more of an ear for this kind of stuff. He seemed to be drawn to the more digital stylings, and I can't say that all credit goes to him alone, but I for one heard a lot of bands because of that guy. My favorite of Davis's rogues gallery, of course, being DEADSY.
Chose DEADSY for Family Values, to be on the Family Values this year. It's a really cool, eclectic band. People believe that they're just a young band starting out, but they've been around for years.
A band that, well, I think would have made it big without the guy. Let's just say that their lead singer Elijah Blue was well connected in the biz. He is the spawn of Cher and Greg Allman after all. And you can even see a young Elijah Blue in the Turn Back Time video. Brilliant. Like, look at this dude, he's tearing it up. And rumor is that he got his first guitar from Gene Simmons. I don't know, I struggle with categorizing DEADSY as simply a Nepo baby band though, essentially because their sound is just so drastically different than his parents, you know what I mean? And I guess that their sound was more Cher than Greg Allman if I had to, pick one of them, at most times at least. But still, for the guys getting started in 1995, I mean, it's all pretty ahead of the curve no matter how you slice it or dice it, especially with their chosen sound. This kind of strange, artsy, mood-driven, bassy, glam-drenched industrial, and that's being light with it. Yet everything DEADSY would become could be heard in those early demos.
Switching all through the night here. This black cloud's just all our fear.
DEADSY got going all the way back in 1995 by Elijah Blue, Alec Puro, Ren Hawkeye, and Carlton Boast. In fact, it wasn't until researching for this I had no idea that their members were so prominent. Like Alec Puro, well, he has a huge career scoring films and TV shows, and I mean, along with a variety of films, the dude made some awesome theme songs too. And Carlton Boast will feature in multiple well-known groups, including Orgy. And the story is that Elijah sent Hawkeye a synth through the mail to kind of join the band, and he obviously joined as Dr. Nur. And I was baffled that he also went on to work in film. He even married Vera Farmiga. As for the band's revolving door of bassists, well, that goes on and on. But their first bassist, or first notable bassist at least, was none other than Jay Gordon of Orgy. But DEADSY and Orgy, aside from having the Jonathan Davis connection, would also share multiple members down the road. And I know that there's like a supposed feud between the two bands, but I don't know, that's a video for another day. Let me know if you want me to touch on that. And just the thought of all these insanely talented and original musicians joining up in 1995 with this sound, it's just nuts to me. Now, DEADSY did seem to get label recognition fairly easy, all things considered. Nepo babies, I don't know, but what do I know in the long run, I guess. But these dudes were talented, and I do believe that Elijah Blue would have found his way to the industry regardless. As once these early demos were in the can, including the first of the group's many covers with Texas Never Whispers,
She's so like a days ago. Should've been a West Coast boy.
well, the group did what a young band did in those days. They started looking for a label. And it works for other bands, you know, why not them? Why not? Yet they did get attention fairly quick. They signed to Elektra Records, and the legendary Seymour Stein took them under his wing. They started recording their debut Commencement. Now you may be wondering, how did the Commencement get started way back then? It didn't get released till years later. But hey, that's the record business. As Elektra was eventually absorbed by blah 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 blah, and DEADSY was essentially left holding the bag with a still unfinished album. But not all was lost, as the label gave the group the option to leave with all their masters intact, a move that would largely service DEADSY down the road. This is a thing that happens sometimes, you know, but if the group is self-aware, confident, and frankly didn't have a crappy producer, I mean, oftentimes getting dropped from a major label isn't always the worst thing to happen, let's just say that. As DEADSY went on to refine their self-titled album and even kind of added some crucial tracks that weren't there before. While this time did see some changes in the lineup, mainly with their bassist. Speaking of which, like, the bassist just kind of comes in and out. It's going to be a bit too much to go over, but still, all of this would work out for the best, especially when Jonathan Davis became interested. Now, I'm not a Korn guy, not sure if that's obvious, but I appreciate what they brought to the table. It just wasn't, you know, my thing, like, at all. However, I did appreciate that Davis helped out a lot of up-and-coming bands, the decent ones anyways. And whatever he saw in DEADSY, well, I'm glad he did, because he would sign the group to his own label, Elementary, a subsidiary of DreamWorks. It took a while, but we finally got Commencement in 2002. And yeah, it was this album that led me to the band. And this album is the one I still revisit. And I suppose you could say that this was the biggest DEADSY would get commercially. There's just so many jams on this thing. But to name a few of my personal favorites, I mean, Mansion World. I love that song Flowing Lower, which was one of the original demos. As well as Cruella. That's a good one.
As the biggest mistake that cool ever made was when she left.
And the cover of Sebado's Brand New Love? What can I say? When the cover's better than the original. To me, this is DEADSY. I don't know. The cryptic logos, the crests on the album cover and whatnot. You know, trying to decipher the Masonic-esque stuff, all of them having their own little weird names and kind of look, and it was just very peculiar and very interesting. The sci-fi skull and crossbones vibes, if you will, it all added to their signature sound. Just perfect. And I don't really get why DEADSY wasn't bigger than they were. I sincerely think that they have such a unique and awe-inspiring sound. One of the bands that, if another band sounds similar to DEADSY, they would suck. You know what I mean? Kind of like Primus or Typo Negative or something. Bands that kind of ripped off that sound, they're more than likely going to 100% be ass. Bands with such unique sounds, they can't be duplicated, not naturally at least. In fact, if I had to compare DEADSY's sound to anyone, it would be like a glam space age version of Typo Negative or something. And again, DEADSY would always be doing covers. You know, right now they could probably release a covers EP. Hell, back then they probably could have done it. But instead of doing that, the guys hit the road hard. Now, DEADSY toured a lot around this time, and they were relentless, staying relevant in this new metal climate, you know. They played it right, and rather than doing a lot of their own tours, they would instead be openers to some huge shows. They would appear on big tours like Lollapalooza. They would first get invited to Family Values. They would do a string of dates opening up for Deftones. They probably played with Nonpoint or some shit. Yet, bad luck always seemed to be around the corner for DEADSY, as by the time they were ready to release their follow-up, Phantasmagore, DreamWorks Records was bought out as part of a merger, and again they found themselves without a label. However, they were still tight with Davis, and he helped produce the album either way, and he even got them signed to the very first label that Korn signed with, so that was something. But I'm not sure if it was the slight change in sound or the time between the albums or, the fans just basically not sticking around, but Phantasmagore wouldn't do nearly as well as Commencement. And, it didn't really feel like a proper follow-up or progression to their sound. Not in any, formal way, at least. Not that was the point or anything, I'm just saying. Similar things would happen here, like, they got the album put on hold, recorded a bunch of stuff later, only it didn't really flow as well, in my opinion. They would pick up some cover songs at the last minute. But, tied in with the show cancellations around that time, and they even had a big music video shoot that they ended up not doing, and, just the underperforming of the album, and the band's leader kind of dealing with a heavy addiction as well. I haven't mentioned that yet, but that's kind of the elephant in the room, I suppose. But that being said, Phantasmagore is yet another unique album, if anything else, for the time it was released. And while I don't enjoy it as much as their previous efforts, the dark times and the sporadic nature of the group, they shine through it all, and it feels very honest here with Phantasmagore. And the work is undeniably growing in some direction, even if I don't understand it. Some of these tracks here are totally out of their comfort zone as well, for better or worse. One time a different point of view with some kind of killer. Yeah, they kind of stayed comfortable with it, it's that underlying DEADSY sound. It's a bit more showboaty, yet understated at some times, and it's just kind of all over the place if you will. I don't know, something about it seems very grounded as well. At first I was thinking it could be the toned down cover art, like, sans all the cryptic stuff featured in Commencement. Here the cover's just kind of, well, this, maybe there's some kind of arc here or theme I'm missing with the album, but I don't know. It's not obvious. It's not as in your face. It's not as, on display. I'll put it that way. So naturally, I just assumed that the recording process was as hectic as could be, and that there must have been a lot of stuff recorded for this album that didn't make the cut. Not that the album feels rushed or anything, just a bit unfocused. Yet still, DEADSY once again did an impressive round of touring in 2006, including yet another stint on the Family Values tour. But as it goes, after this cycle, DEADSY would go on indefinite hiatus, announcing that they were basically taking a break and doing a few projects on the side. And that would result in member Carlton Bose joining the Dreaming and Elijah Blue to announce Elijah Blue and the Trapezoids, which failed to do much. In fact, the only thing that came from that was a few demos, I think, on like MySpace or Facebook, but now we're falling a long way down. Yeah, we're falling a long way down. None of it mattered, because soon after, in 2010, the group would go on full hiatus, or go to sleep, as Elijah claimed. And honestly, that seems to be the one thing that was hindering the group the whole time. Elijah Blue. Personally, I never knew about all this stuff when I was into the group, but Elijah Blue was from a very early age addicted to substances, and by the time his musical career took off, he was dabbling in some heavy-duty stuff. But it's nice to see, that Cher was at least trying to help. Whether you agree with her or not, she did attempt in recent years to gain conservatorship over Elijah. She just cares about her son, from what I've seen. It's all very genuine. It's coming from a place of love. And Elijah, as confused as he is, he doesn't seem to be really harming anybody but himself. And all of this pretty much is in the wake of a supposed return of DEADSY. This time, though, they changed their name. It's spelled a little different, and apparently this is a track off their unreleased album Subterfuge, but it doesn't really sound like DEADSY. They did a lot of acoustic stuff on the Family Values tours, so maybe they're taking heat from that. Yet as it goes with the entity that is DEADSY, as soon as any progress is made, it's hindered by something, and in this case, it got very serious. Just earlier this year, 2025, Elijah was rushed off to the ER due to an overdose. But by simply letting the music speak for itself, it really does become its own. And let's say reality need not apply when it comes to DEADSY. There really is something for everyone when it comes to the group, and I for one really hope to hear some more at some point. I'm not sure if it needs to be the original lineup, however, that would be sweet. Oh, and shout out to Cher. Staunch gang, that's all I got for you. Let me know down below who I should touch on next. I have a lot of stuff planned. I'm knocking out the videos that you guys voted for. So once I knock another one out, I will be putting up another poll on my community post. So be sure you hit like, subscribe, and all on that little notification bell.